What happens when two of the most talked about members of the royal family come face to face on live television for the first time since the explosive revelations that rocked the monarchy? What happens when years of carefully crafted public statements, strategic silences, and diplomatic restraint suddenly give way to raw, unfiltered truth? Today, we're diving into one of the most shocking television moments in recent royal history. A confrontation so intense that it left viewers around the world speechless and sparked debates that are still raging today. If you want to stay updated on all the latest royal drama and behind-the-scenes moments like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really happened here. Now, let's get into this incredible story. The atmosphere in the View studio was electric with anticipation. Whoopi Goldberg had just finished introducing the show's most anticipated guest in months. Prince William, who sat composed in the familiar interview chair, his posture reflecting years of royal training. The audience was still settling from their enthusiastic applause when Whoopi delivered the bombshell that would change everything. "We have a surprise guest joining us today," Whoopi announced, her voice carrying a hint of mischief that immediately caught William's attention. "Please welcome Meghan Markle." The camera captured the exact moment. William's composure faltered. His shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly, and for just a fraction of a second, genuine surprise flickered across his features. The audience erupted in gasps and excited murmurs as Meghan walked onto the stage, her confident stride and warm smile a stark contrast to the sudden chill that seemed to descend over the set. "Hello, William," Meghan said as she took her seat, her voice steady but carrying an undertone that suggested this moment had been a long time coming. "It's been a while." William recovered quickly, his training kicking in as he offered a polite nod. "Meghan, this is certainly unexpected." Joy Behar leaned forward, clearly relishing the tension. "Well, this is certainly a first. We have both, the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Sussex, here together." "How are you both feeling about this surprise reunion?" Meghan answered first, her media savvy apparent as she addressed the camera as much as the hosts. "I think it's important that we have these conversations. Transparency has always been something I've valued, and I believe the public deserves to hear directly from us, rather than through palace statements or unnamed sources." The subtle dig wasn't lost on anyone, least of all William. His jaw tightened slightly as he responded. "The royal family has always believed in handling private matters privately. Some conversations are better kept within the family, but that's just it, isn't it?" Meghan's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath the surface. "When have we ever been treated as family? When have our concerns ever been addressed privately, rather than dismissed or, worse, leaked to the press with a completely different narrative?" Sunny Hostin sensed the rising tension and decided to push further. "Meghan, you're referring to the allegations made during your interview about concerns regarding Archie's skin color. William, you famously responded by saying the royal family is not racist? Do you still stand by that statement?" William's response was measured but firm. "I stand by everything I said. The royal family is not a racist family. We are very much a family that supports diversity and inclusion, and we have been for many years." Meghan's laugh was soft but held no warmth. "It's fascinating how you can speak with such certainty about experiences you've never had. You've never had to wonder if your child would be accepted because of the color of their skin. You've never had to sit in meetings where people discussed whether your baby deserved the same protections as other royal children. That is not what happened," William said, his voice taking on a sharper edge. "You're mischaracterizing conversations and taking things completely out of context." "And Meghan turned to face him directly now, her composure matching his. "Then please, enlighten us. What was the context when someone in your family expressed concerns about how dark our son might be? What context makes that acceptable?" The studio fell silent, except for the low hum of cameras. William's hands, which had been resting calmly on his lap, now gripped the armrests of his chair. Those were private family conversations that have been completely misrepresented. Complex discussions about heritage and identity have been twisted into something they were never intended to be. "Heritage and identity," Meghan repeated, her voice rising slightly. "Is that what we're calling it now? Because what I heard was very different. What I heard was concern about how my son's appearance might affect the monarchy's image. Whoopi attempted to regain control of the conversation. Let's take a step back here. William, from your perspective, how do you view what happened with Harry and Meghan's departure from royal duties? William seized the opportunity to redirect. What happened was a family making difficult decisions during challenging times. We all wanted what was best for Harry, Meghan, and their children. The door has always remained open for dialogue and reconciliation. Has it, though? Meghan's question cut through his diplomatic response. Because from where I sat, every attempt at dialogue was met with lectures about duty and tradition, while our very real concerns about safety and mental health were dismissed as dramatics. Your safety was never dismissed, William said, his voice taking on a tone of barely controlled frustration. The Royal Protection Unit takes every threat seriously. But you can't expect the same level of security when you've chosen to step away from royal duties and move to another country. Chosen Meghan emphasized the word. You make it sound like we had endless options. We asked for a hybrid model, a way to serve the Commonwealth while also maintaining some independence. We were told that was impossible, that we were either all in or all out. And when we chose our family's well-being over an institution that seemed determined to make us miserable, suddenly we were selfish and ungrateful. Sarah Ann jumped in, sensing the conversation reaching a crucial point. William, do you feel that Meghan and Harry were supported during their time as working royals? William paused, clearly choosing his words carefully. The royal family supported them in every way we knew how. If that support wasn't received in the way it was intended, then perhaps there were communication issues on all sides. Communication issues? Meghan said, shaking her head slightly. That's one way to put it. Another way would be to acknowledge that, when I came to senior members of the family expressing genuine distress about my mental health, I was told to keep quiet and not make waves. When I said I was having thoughts of self-harm, I was told that seeking help would be bad for the institution's image. The weight of Meghan's words hung heavy in the studio air. William's face had gone pale, and for the first time since the conversation began, he seemed genuinely shaken. His voice, when he finally spoke, carried a tremor of emotion that his royal training couldn't quite suppress. That is absolutely not true. No one in our family would ever dismiss concerns about mental health. We have been champions of mental health awareness for years. Harry and I literally built our public service around breaking the stigma. Then where were those champions when I needed them? Meghan's voice cracked slightly, the first sign of vulnerability she'd shown. Where was that compassion when I was struggling? Because what I experienced was being told that I needed to understand my place, that seeking professional help would create headlines that the family wasn't prepared to deal with. Alyssa Farah Griffin leaned forward, clearly moved by the raw emotion in the exchange. William, if Meghan is saying she wasn't supported when she expressed having thoughts of self-harm, how do you respond to that? William ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that spoke to his growing frustration. I respond by saying that if someone was struggling to that extent, then clearly our family failed in ways I'm not fully aware of. But I also have to say that my recollection of events is very different from what's being described here. Your recollection? Meghan said, her composure returning with a sharp edge. You mean your version of events, where everything was handled perfectly, and I'm just an oversensitive American who couldn't handle royal life. I never said that, and I would never say that, William shot back, his diplomatic mask finally beginning to slip. But I will say that joining our family requires, maybe if there had been more patience, more willingness to learn rather than immediately trying to change everything. The studio collectively held its breath. Meghan's eyes flashed with an intensity that made it clear William had just crossed a line he might not be able to walk back from. More patience? Her voice was quiet now, but it carried the dangerous calm of a gathering storm. I spent 2 years being patient, William. I spent 2 years following protocol, learning traditions, keeping quiet when tabloids called me names that I won't repeat on television. I was patient when they criticized everything from how I held my baby bump to how I closed a car door. I was patient when palace staff leaked stories to make Kate look better at my expense. That's not how it works, William interrupted, his own voice rising. The palace doesn't play favorites or orchestrate press coverage to benefit one member over another. Meghan's laugh was bitter. Really? Then explain to me why every time Harry and I had a successful engagement or positive press coverage, within hours there would be a strategically timed story about Kate or you that would push us off the front pages. Explain to me why my staff kept getting calls from certain private secretaries asking them to delay announcing our initiatives until after other family members had their moments. Let's talk about specific examples. Remember when Harry and I announced our pregnancy with Elizabeth? Within 2 hours, suddenly there was breaking news about Kate's early childhood initiative. In South Africa, the next day there were exclusive photos of your children at a polo match. Every single time, William, every time we tried to do meaningful work, we were upstaged by carefully orchestrated palace announcements. Joy Behar sensed the conversation reaching a critical juncture. William, is there truth to what Meghan is saying about coordinated efforts to control media coverage? William's pause spoke volumes. When he finally answered, his words were carefully chosen but telling. The palace coordinates announcements to ensure maximum impact for all working royals. That's standard practice. It's not personal, it's strategic. Strategic, Meghan repeated. So you admit that there was coordination. You admit that our work was deliberately overshadowed to benefit other family members. I admit that media strategy exists, William said, his frustration evident. But you're making it sound malicious when it's simply about managing a complex institution with multiple working members. Multiple working members who are apparently not all equal, Meghan countered. Because somehow Kate's initiatives always got priority placement. And your charitable work never seemed to get buried under surprise announcements from other royals. Sunny Hostin jumped in, clearly fascinated by this insider view of royal dynamics. Meghan, are you saying there was a deliberate hierarchy in how family members were promoted by the palace? I'm saying that Harry and I were told repeatedly that we needed to remember our place in the line of succession, that we were there to support the future king and queen, not to outshine them. It was useful but needed to be carefully managed so it didn't overshadow the main event. William's composure finally cracked completely. The main event? Is that how you saw our family? As some kind of performance where you deserved top billing? I saw it as public service, Meghan fired back. I thought we were all working toward the same goals, serving the people, making a difference. But what I discovered was that some people's service mattered more than others, and some people's success was seen as a threat rather than an asset. Your success was never seen as a threat, William said, but his tone suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. If anything, we were excited about the energy and fresh perspective you brought. Then why was I constantly being told to tone it down? Why was every speech I wanted to give about women's rights or racial equality met with suggestions to make it less political, less controversial, less me? Sarah N. leaned in, clearly riveted. Can you give us a specific example of that kind of censorship? Meghan nodded, her expression serious. I wanted to give a speech about the importance of diverse representation in media and politics. I was told it was too divisive for a member of the royal family, but when I suggested speaking about mental health instead, I was told that was already being covered adequately by other family members and I should focus on safer topics like fashion or cooking. That's not censorship, William protested. That's guidance to help you find your unique voice within the institutional framework. My unique voice, Meghan said with obvious frustration, apparently needed to be exactly like everyone else's voice, just with an American accent. Every suggestion I made for modernizing approaches or reaching new audiences was met with explanations about why things had always been done a certain way. Whoopi decided to push the conversation toward an even more sensitive topic. Let's talk about the children. Both of you are parents now. How do you want your children to understand this family dynamic? The question seemed to hit both of them differently. William's expression softened slightly as he considered his words. I want my children to understand that family is complicated, but love and loyalty should always prevail. They're cousins. Meghan's response was equally measured, but carried a different weight. I want my children to know their worth isn't determined by their place in a hierarchy. I want them to understand that speaking truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is more important than maintaining appearances. Sometimes protecting your family means making difficult choices that others might not understand. The mention of their children seemed to shift something fundamental in the room's energy. Both William and Meghan appeared to recognize they had crossed into territory that was deeply personal, and their responses carried a gravity that hadn't been present before. Alyssa Farah Griffin pressed further. William, do you believe your children will have a relationship with Archie and Lilibet as they grow up? William's answer came slowly, each word carefully weighed. I hope so. I genuinely hope so. But that depends on decisions being made by their parents about how much they want to be part of this family versus how much they want to remain separate from it. Separate from it. Meghan's voice carried a note of incredulity. We never wanted to be separate from the family. We wanted to be separate from the dysfunction, from the manipulation, from the constant fear that our children would grow up thinking their worth was determined by their birth order. Joy Behar sensed an opportunity to dig deeper. Meghan, when you think about Archie and Lilibet's future, do you see them having any role in the royal family? I see them having a role in whatever family chooses to embrace them fully, Meghan replied. Right now, that family happens to be the one Harry and I have built in California, surrounded by people who love them for who they are, not for what they represent or how they can be used. William's reaction was immediate and sharp. Used. That's really how you see us. As people who would use children, I see you as people who have been conditioned to see everything, including family relationships, through the lens of institutional benefit. Meghan responded without hesitation. When Archie was born, the first conversations weren't about his health or happiness. They were about security costs, about title implications, about how his existence would affect succession planning. Those are necessary conversations when you're born into this family, William said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. They're not personal attacks, they're practical realities. And that's exactly the problem, Meghan shot back. Your nephew was treated as a practical reality instead of a precious child. My son's value was calculated in terms of cost and benefit, rather than celebrated simply because he existed. Sunny Hostin leaned forward, clearly moved by the raw emotion. In Meghan's voice, that must have been incredibly painful as a new mother. It was devastating, Meghan admitted, her voice softening with vulnerability. I had just given birth. I was struggling with my mental health. And instead of receiving support and celebration, I was getting spreadsheets about security expenses and lectures about setting precedents. William looked genuinely uncomfortable, now shifting in his seat as he responded. If that's how those conversations came across, then clearly we failed in our communication. The intention was never to make you feel unwelcome or to treat Archie as anything less than a beloved member of our family. But that is how it came across, Meghan said firmly, and when I tried to express how hurtful it was, I was told I was being too sensitive, that I needed to develop thicker skin for royal life. Sarah N. decided to address the elephant in the room directly. We have to talk about Harry in all of this. William, how do you feel about your relationship with your brother now? The question visibly pained William. For the first time during the entire interview, his composure completely cracked, and genuine anguish crossed his features. I miss my brother every single day. I miss the relationship we had. I miss being able to call him when something funny happens or when I need advice. I miss my children knowing their uncle properly. Meghan's expression softened slightly at William's obvious pain, but her response remained pointed. Then why haven't you called him? Why haven't you made an effort to repair the relationship instead of letting Palace Communications speak for you in the press? Because every time we try to have a private conversation, it ends up in interviews or books or Netflix documentaries. William replied, his frustration evident. How can we rebuild trust when privacy no longer exists? Works both ways, William, Meghan countered. How many stories have been planted about Harry's mental health, about our marriage, about our parenting? How many unnamed royal sources have shared intimate details about our private struggles? The difference is, we put our names on our stories. Your family hides behind anonymity while destroying our reputations. Whoopi could sense the conversation approaching its climax and decided to push for a resolution. If you two were in a room together without cameras, without staff, without anyone else, what would you say to each other? William went first, his voice heavy with emotion. I would say that I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you felt unsupported. I'm sorry that our family wasn't what you needed it to be. I'm sorry that my brother felt he had to choose between his family and his wife. And I'm sorry that my niece and nephew are growing up, not knowing their cousins. The studio fell completely silent as Meghan absorbed his words. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with unshed tears. "I would say that I'm sorry too. I'm sorry that loving Harry meant losing you. I'm sorry that trying to protect my children meant cutting them off from their grandfather and their uncle. I'm sorry that speaking our truth meant destroying relations."